Hello and welcome to our first live streamed event of the new year. I'm Rebecca Phillips, Executive Director of Portland Columbia Symphony. And yes, we are in a yoga studio tonight. We have had to be pretty creative in almost everything this past year, including finding performance venues. Fortunately, we are artists and creativity is pretty much our specialty. A couple of events coming up that I wanted to let you know about before we start. Next month, we'll be celebrating Mardi Gras at our first ever virtual gala. In March, we've got an all-percussion ensemble for you, and in April, we'll be doing Stravinsky's Soldier's Tale. So lots of events, lots of events to enjoy coming up. Make sure that you're receiving our emails, that you subscribe to our YouTube channel, and that you follow us on social media so you get all the information you need to tune in. Now, if you like what you hear tonight, and you feel compelled to support more opportunities to keep musicians like these working and art in the community, you can drop by our tip jar on Venmo. PC Symphony is our handle, or you can stop by the quick donate link on our website, pcsymphony.org. And now to introduce the musicians, we have Joe Klause, Logan Brown on trumpet, Doug Riggs on French horn, Greg Scholl on trombone, and Joe Reddy on tuba. And they'll be telling you a little bit more about the music as we go along tonight, so I'm going to turn it over to them. Portland Columbia Symphony Brass Quintet.
name is Greg Scholl. I'm a trombone player in the Portland Columbia Symphony, and I'd like to also welcome you to our concert this evening and thank you for joining us. The piece that we just performed for you was The Dance by Wilke Renwick, and we're going to proceed with a piece by MacDonald. You know, I have heard recently that sea shanties are enjoying quite a renaissance in popularity, and so we are going to jump onto that bandwagon for you tonight, and we hope you enjoy our rendition of Sea Sketches, a 3-movement piece by MacDonald.
Born in Australia, Percy Grainger has turned out to be one of the most influential and respected composers of wind and brass music of the 20th century. I think we're all fond of his music, yet when he died at the age of 78 in 1961, he actually considered himself a failure. Moving to Europe in the early part of the last century, he caught the eye of Queen Alexandria, as well as several wealthy and older female patrons who pushed his career as a pianist forward. Yet it was composition that gave him a purpose and a passion. Grainger's transcriptions of old English folk songs were the first time that many of these songs had been put down on paper, and he was one of the early advocates of the Edison cylinder phonograph to record many native folk singers. Much of this material later became central to his works in his later years. He was a fan of Grieg, Debussy, and Strauss, some of which you can hear in the piece that we're going to play for you shortly. But it was after Grainger moved to America in 1914 that he composed many of his great works. He played saxophone and oboe for a time in the Army, U.S. Army Band, and that certainly had an impact on his compositional style. A quotation that I saw today said a lot about his music. The quote says, "Grainger was a musical democrat. He believed that in a performance, each player's role should be of equal importance. His elastic scoring technique was developed to enable groups of all sizes, like these 5 musicians or a large wind band, in combinations of instruments to give effective performances of his music." Grainger called the piece that we're playing today Musical Wildflowers. The first movement of the Lincolnshire Posy, which we're playing, is called Lisbon, and it was written as a commission from the National Bandmasters Association. Each movement is intended to be a kind of musical portrait of the singer who sang its underlying melody, a musical portrait of the singer's personality, no less than of his habits, contrast with legato and staccato, and his tendency towards breadth and delicacy of tone. Here are some of the lyrics. "'Twas on a Monday morning, all in the month of May, our ship she weighed her anchor, all for to sail away. The wind did from the southwest blow, for Lisbon we were bound. The hills and dales were covered with pretty young girls around. And it continues. So hopefully you'll enjoy this musical portrait of English folk singers.
The next piece we are going to play is by our contrabassoon player of the Portland Columbia Symphony and also a composer and also a friend, Nicole Buetti. And this is the third movement of her Apollo Brass Quintet. The Apollo Brass Quintet has 3 movements and memorializes the various Apollo missions, the Apollo space missions that were taken through the 20th century. This one is Voyager, and I'm sure probably you know of the starship Voyager, which has broken through into interstellar space. It's the first man-made object to human-made object to go past our solar system, and it's still running strong even though it was launched in the 70s, I want to say, which is pretty amazing. It's decades past its expiration date, and it's still sending data, so it's pretty amazing. And we really enjoy playing this piece. We've played this piece before in a different setting, and it's super fun and really inspiring, actually, for me, because I like space. Enjoy.
Thank you very much. Our next piece is going to be a series of dances, Renaissance dances, that were actually written in the 16th century by Tylman Susato. This is an arrangement by John Owaisin. And Susato was a Flemish composer in the 16th century, and one of the few who wrote many amateur-style dance pieces for the general public. At the time, he wasn't really known for being a really great composer. He wasn't one of the greats, but he wrote a lot of these really nice, easy listening, fun to play dance music for parties, for everybody to be able to play and enjoy. And still, even now, this is a pretty standard brass quintet piece now in the brass quintet repertoire that people are familiar with. So we are doing 3 selections from this suite of 5 dances, the first, third, and fifth movement, and we hope you enjoy it.
The next piece on our program is titled Frostfire by Owaisin. Owaisin is an American composer. He is a music theory and analysis professor at the Juilliard School of Music in New York City and has been on faculty at Juilliard since 1982. Frostfire was commissioned by the American Brass Quintet for the 40th anniversary of their ensemble. The first movement that we will be playing for you is quite intricate with mixed meter passages throughout the movement and is rather heroic, bright, and fast in nature. We hope you enjoy the first movement of Owaisin's Frostfire.
Next, we're going to play the music of Charles Ives, ladies and gentlemen. Charles Ives is an American composer. We are going to perform a piece written for brass quintet called Four Songs. It was transcribed by a person named Kenneth Singleton. And I'm going to tell you just a little bit about these four songs. They're very short. Charles Ives was a composer who wrote quite a bit of music. He didn't hear a lot of it performed during his lifetime. He kept it in a desk, and many pieces were discovered after his death. He's a very great modern American composer. The four pieces that we're going to play are kind of quirky. Charles Ives used some modern compositional techniques as well as some older methods. It's kind of a mix of things present in his music. The four pieces we're going to play, I'm going to talk about them in reverse order. So the last movement is called Tarrant Moss, M-O-S-S. The subtitle to this piece is called Slugging a Vampire. Charles Ives wrote this music to go along with a poem by Rudyard Kipling, and his idea was that the poem could be set to music, and it would have the poem would be the lyrics for this piece. But unfortunately, Rudyard Kipling or the Kipling estate didn't agree to this plan, and so Charles was just left with the music. And he wrote some of his own words for this music. And the first line goes, "I closed and drew, but not a gun." And I'll let you just imagine what the rest of the piece is like. It's a very sort of bracing piece, slugging a vampire. The third movement that we're going to play is simply titled Slow March. My understanding is that Ives wrote this as a funeral procession for a family dog that had passed away, and it kind of sounds like that. The second piece we're going to play was written in 1921. It's called The Sideshow, and this is music to accompany the image of an old horse sort of pulling a broken merry-go-round, and that is sort of what it sounds like. And then the piece that we'll start with, the first movement of these four songs by Charles Ives, is called On the Counter, and this is my favorite. This is a slow piece, and when Ives was a young person, maybe a child in fact, he went into a music store in the neighborhood where he lived, and there was a stack of sheet music sitting on the counter, and he noticed it, and he went back into that music store 30 years later, when he was an adult, he went back into the music store 30 years later, and the same stack of music was still sitting in the same place on the counter in the store. And he happened to notice that not only was the same stack of music sitting there, but the same piece of sheet music was laying on top of the stack for all those years. And he quotes that piece of music in the last 4 or 5 measures of this piece. It's a melody that I think you all will recognize. We certainly hope you enjoy the 4 songs for brass quintet by Charles Ives. The first movement is On the Counter.
And now for a significant change of pace. Boogie Woogie Bugle Boy might be called the Billie Eilish or Taylor Swift of its day. It actually hit number 6 on the pop charts and ended up ranked as one of the top popular songs of the century. Written for the Abbott and Costello film Buck Pirates, it starred the Andrews sisters, but really was based on an earlier tune for club piano. This is one of those songs that has lived well past its era and has been re-recorded dozens and dozens of times, most memorably by Bette Midler, En Vogue, Marie Osmond, and now by the Portland Columbia Brass Quintet.
All right, this one. And we've come to the end. Before I introduce the last piece, just a shout out to Portland Columbia Symphony to offering its brass quintet an opportunity to perform. As all professional musicians right now during this pandemic, during the winter, when you can't play outside, it's cut off really most opportunities for us to get to connect with audiences and do our art. And so it goes without saying how grateful we are as musicians to be part of a organization that helps us and supports us through this time. And as Rebecca said earlier, if you like what you hear, there are opportunities to help support the organization and as a musician, we would really appreciate that. And another shout out to Joe, the tubist over there, Mr. Joe Reddy. Greg on the trombone here. Doug, Master Doug on the horn. The great and wonderful Logan Thane Brown on trumpet. And I'm Joe Klause on the other trumpet. The last piece of the evening is another kind of jazzy kind of thing. It's by Lenny Niehaus. Lenny Niehaus is a saxophonist and was most well known for his arrangements in LA, writing for various big bands. You might have heard his music on the Space movie. Do you hear a theme here called Space Cowboys, where three slightly getting over the hill actors decided to go in front of a blue screen and pretend that they were in space in a very impractical situation. But that's besides the point. He did the musical composition for that. He wrote this piece for brass quintet. So, for instance, the Boogie Woogie Experience was an arrangement. Somebody took a piece that was done and then arranged it for this ensemble. This is a piece that was actually written for these 5 instruments. And it's super fun. You don't find that many jazz brass quintets. So we really enjoy playing this. Thank you so much for listening. And thank you. A big shout out to the East Coast people who I know are listening. It's nice of you to stay awake on this Friday evening. Enjoy Brassability. Thank you for listening.
Hey, Joe, can we dedicate this piece? Can we send out a long-distance dedication?
Let's send out a long-distance dedication. Who are we dedicating it to there?
Yeah, we're going to send this piece out to our BFF, Maestro Stephen Baez.
Oh!
Like